Welcome to Italics, television for the Italian-American experience. I'm your host, Anthony Tamburri. This month, we went to Lincoln Center for the 23rd edition of Open Road's New Italian Cinema. There, we had the opportunity to speak with a number of the directors showing their films for the first time, many of them in the United States. Let's go to Lincoln Center.
88 seconda.
Azione!
You know, I work with Cinecittà to come up with sort of list of things that are in consideration for this year's edition, and then I work my way through it and watch many Italian films, and then I boil it down to however many we can fit into the lineup. So, you know, in previous years we've had, you know, it's usually like the lineup is maybe closer to 15 films, but this year we had some films with quite long run times, so so we had to sort of sacrifice a little bit of space in that way. But it, you know, I think the work that necessitated that merited, you know, this kind of shift on our part. Yeah, the films are pretty distinct, so it requires a bit of thought to sort of figure out what unites them all, just besides, as you know, the national cinema that they come from. A lot of the films in this year's lineup deal with Italian history, and they deal with it in a way that feels, at least to me, pretty contemporary.
Vabbè, comunque sta a fare una cosa importante.
Speriamo.
Very happy to be here. Thanks for the attention that you give to Open Roads. That is an important Italian event in order to give the sense to the American audience of how much contemporary Italian cinema is stronger and powerful as Italian cinema was in the 60s. It's the 23rd edition. This is a clear demonstration of how much our relationship with Lincoln Center is a strong relationship, because we want to deliver movies to an American audience. So it has to be an American event with Italian movies at the center of it. This year we are happy about the delegation and the quality of the movies that we are presenting to the New York audience, because there is a big variety of movies. It's a clear demonstration of how contemporary Italian cinema is able to deliver different genres, different type of movies, with a point in common, that is the quality of the production value. So we have 3 first works. We have a lot of talented women in the delegation, and we have established filmmakers that are keep on delivering important movies. If you want to understand which is the situation today in Italy, which is the state of the art of Italian movie industry, I think that Open Roads is able to give the right answer to that. We are seeing a clear development of Italian movies being able to be more contemporary in the production scale and also in the design of the movies as well, and in the way in which stories are told and delivered to the audience. And this is typical of the Italian cinematography, and is based on a principal fact: our capacity of being emotional in what we do, our capacity of catch emotion, put it on screen, and bring it out for the audience that are watching them. And that's the reason why we are living a new golden age of Italian movies, of Italian cinematography around the world. I'm happy that we opened this edition of Open Roads with Il Comandante, a movie that opened the Venice Film Festival, and the movie that is a perfect mix of the Italian quality in terms of production, of the Italian capacity of telling pretty unique stories, and the Italian capacity of being heroic through the art. All these movies that are telling different stories, different period of time, different characters, touch your heart. There is a part of emotion in it that is very clear, very consistent, and this is what makes, to me, the Italian cinematography special.
Make movies is a political gesture, always, of course. The biggest problem for everyone, everywhere, his identity.
We don't have to be, as directors or artists, obliged to speak only about ourselves, our own identities, because it could be extremely frustrating if we got to a point that everybody is, forced to speak only about who he is, where he comes from. It's a big limitation of freedom in the art world, and I think it's a big danger nowadays.
There is something you need to protect, like a colonialistic approach on like genre, cultures, identity. But on the other hand, you need to be open to the dialogue. Otherwise, it's going to be really risky for everyone. I mean, it's really like important to communicate, to exchange, to be contaminated in order to create something relevant for the world.
The minute we open our mouth and we decide to make a film in black and white or color, or with young people, old people, it's a political choice that has consequences that we're ready to bear, which is what we do. And so being free to do that is probably the biggest gift we can get given as storytellers.
Lui protegge e governa il mio destino.
I can just tell you how I speak about this movie to my child. So I told him that I want to talk about strength, and I told to him that I hate the idea of the strength like humiliation, like violence. I like the strength as an idea of giving help.
La nostra trincea non si vede.
That's my idea of the strong man, a man who helps.
Protetto da strati di acqua e da
And what does it mean to follow the rules or decide to don't follow determined rules? If that rules are against the rules that everybody of us have inside, written in our DNA, it's very dangerous for humanity. Don't follow the rules or forget the rules, or worst, this to decide to break that rules.
Ma l'uomo lo salviamo in guerra. Siamo ancora uomini però.
When I discovered the story, I found in that everything I was looking for. It was the 2018 Admiral Giovanni Pettorino, the chief of the Coast Guard, needed to say to his men which behavior they had to have in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the Mediterranean, because our government decided to close the docks. So we have a lot of ships waiting for something in the middle of the sea, with women, with children, with sick people, starving, dying. And what happened? For 4 years, this man continued to say to his men to save people in the Middle Sea, but without any publicity. So we had this paradox in Italy, that an institution, the Coast Guard, which mission is save people, did this in secret, hiding this activity. Inside the submarine, everything, every gesture, every word, every sight needs to be precise, because if you do the wrong thing, and your people die. For this reason, shoot a movie in a submarine is like shooting in the middle of the space, because nothing can be casual.
Cosa facciamo, comandante?
Te tiremos su.
Cuba y Estados Unidos celebran hoy una nueva ronda de conversaciones sobre migración. Nuestro país está viviendo el mayor éxodo migratorio.
I would say that my movie is like a collective movie of 3 different stories. A story of 2 children, a story of like a young couple and an old lady. And it's a movie that talks about separation, set in Cuba, in a small town in Cuba, under 3 different perspectives. I chose them because I was really like fascinated by them. I was really like artistically in love with their stories and with them. I've been living for many years in Cuba, and it's a country that I really love, and I was studying there cinema, and I was wondering about like which kind of story I could tell speaking about Cuba. I remember like the first time that I was there when I was 8 years old. I got this image stuck in my mind of like a father and a daughter that were like separating in front of the airport and were not able to really like separate. And when I got back to thinking about what could I tell about like Cuba and about like the people of Cuba, I had this idea of talking about separation.
Dale, viejo, que tengo sueño, vamos, no hay nada ahí. Pesado.
¿Cómo que no hay nada? ¿Y si hay?
That was like something interesting to me and to them because it was kind of a clash and a mix in between their stories and in between their real life and their real past and real experience on one end, and on the other was like you know, my point of view, but really like in an open way. I mean, it was not like a hierarchic approach. It was just really like sharing and talking about the scene, talking about the characters in order to be really like more honest and spontaneous possible and respectful also. We didn't want to have like a post-colonial approach into this story. I mean, it's fiction with like a script, but at the same time, it's like the main characters, the main protagonists are enacting themselves.
Tú vas a ver que todo va a estar bien. Todo va a cambiar.
No quiero que nada cambie.
No me olvide.
I choose to shoot in black and white because generally like the aesthetics of Cuba was connected to like a touristic approach to selling like images that are really colorful, full of old cars, full of mojitos, this kind of stuff. So using like a filter like black and white is helps you in getting in touch more directly and without any like influence of the collective imaginary.
Go away.
Caldo in questo mese.
Sono previste temperature in salita di almeno 2 gradi.
There are 4 stories that intertwine in a January in Rome when all of a sudden there's a heat wave that arrives. And all the characters in the film have a family sadness, and they have been trying to cover this sadness with all sorts of things. They eat, they drink, they do plastic surgery, they love, they do all sorts of things to forget. But this day, where the heat arrives, they have to look at their pain.
Stammi lontana, vattene!
Well, I think, you know, this film really stems from my own anxieties. First is the anxiety of the climate change. Big theme is addiction, really, and how we try to find ways to escape our own trauma. And in the film, the characters have to face themselves. So this is a film about a heat wave in January. We shot in March. It wasn't hot, so we had to recreate heat. How do you create heat? And how do you show heat and make the people feel that heat? So sweat, how do you have your actors sweat? What do you use? Hair, the makeup, the costumes, the photography. What is the look you're gonna give so you could feel this heat?
Amore. Sei venuta a cena.
We wrote the film, 3 screenwriters, women, and when we read the script, we said, oh my God, this is really a script about motherhood. There's a lot about motherhood, not good motherhood, you know, complex motherhood. So there is a character, Caterina, in the film who explains this, you know, that she's sad sometimes and that she wants to escape and that she cannot be the mother that she would like to be. The best part for me is prepping and shooting the film. I really enjoyed that side and being on the set and working with the actors. And it's also like this film is obviously very dramatic, but it's also funny. And so we had a lot of fun making it. I wish I had made 4 films.
Another End racconta
The film Another End talks about a world in which there's this technology called Another End, which allows you to see the memories of the deceased through a host body. And the host body will then interpret the life of that person that has passed away, the deceased person, which will allow the host body then to experience grief, and in a certain sense to prepare themselves for a grief that they will undergo in their own lives. And in the film we tell the story of Sal, who has lost his wife in a car accident, who decides to undergo this therapy, Another End, in order to relive the love that he felt for his wife through the person of another woman. In a way, the starting concept comes from sci-fi, but in order to tell a love story, and a love story where there is a separation between the body and awareness and consciousness. In this case, where I'm asking myself the question and asking the viewer to ask themselves the question of what we love when we love. Do we love, for example, the memory of that person, or do we love a kind of a sensory experience, something that we feel in our body? I realize now that I've made the film sort of in retrospect how a certain event in my life has also influenced this. When I became a father, I realized that there's a whole other dimension of love and of connecting to people, a sensual, bodily kind of feeling, not expressed through language. For example, just lying down in bed together like you do with a child, and you feel this very deep spiritual, not rational sort of connection, feeling hopelessly in love really, but without there being an exchange of words. Maybe it's a connection through smell, for example, something that you just feel deeply in your body, something that is spiritual, something that is very deep. And I realized that it is this that characterizes not only the love, for example, between a parent and a child, but all types of love. When I wrote the film, and looking at the script, I realized that it could be sort of made like a sci-fi film, when what I really wanted to make was a romantic film. So I made the decision from that point on, because as a sci-fi film, it would have been philosophical, maybe, but maybe a little bit cold. And instead, I wanted to contrast that. And so every decision I made from that point on was to counter that aspect of the script. And the first thing that I needed was the warmest actor that I could think of. And the warmest actor that I know, really one of the greatest in the world, is Gael Garcia Bernal. And that would lend that romanticism to that would help create the romantic picture that I wanted to make. And I also wanted to use the most neutral language possible, so that if I'd used Italian, it would have become very localized in Italy, the film. And instead, by using the English of film, for example, that broadened the lens that I had onto the world.
Buongiorno. Anche tu la sarta. Mi faccio dipingere.
It's a story of a very young girl trying to understand who she is, trying to make it in a big city, and trying to come to terms with her sexual orientation and finding the strength to love who she wants and the way she wants. The actors are all very young. For most of them, it's a film debut. Deva was a very first film because she's a model. So we waited for her to turn 18 and we started to shoot the film on the 12th of September, which is the day of her birthday. Deva was the youngest. Torino is a beautiful city, very well preserved, and that helps when you're making a costume film. It was a teamwork based on two things that I asked them. First, to follow my obsessive palette, which I had in mind, which is the pale blue, the pale green, the ochre, and just the red only for one character, and then glass, transparencies, metal. And the other thing that I asked was, bring me all the elements in terms of clothing or furniture from the 30s that we use nowadays and we don't even know they are so old. Because I wanted to shorten the distance between the screen and the young audience. Well, I wanted people to recognize themselves by looking at the actors and finding pieces of garments on themselves that the actors had, although the story was set in 1938. These were the two diktats, of the production.
Sali allo studio, ti faccio il ritratto.
The incredible story written by a master of Italian literature, Cesare Pavese, which was and it is daunting for a filmmaker. It's never been adapted before because his novels are very evocative, melancholic, very beautiful, but they lack of structure, which is great about a novel and more problematic about a film. We are in 1938. It's a time of fascism, and so we hear Mussolini speaking, and then we see elements in the city. But what we focus on is the growth of a young girl who wants to be herself.
Il film è appunto il mio primo film.
This is my first film, and of course, when you're making your first film, you kind of reflect also on all the previous films that you've seen, all the films that were part of your formation as a filmmaker. And here I'm talking about my adolescence and referring to where I grew up, the important places of my youth, both the countryside outside of Rome and the center of Rome, and the language, by which I mean social media that we use. So the narrative is created not so much through words, but through images, conveyed through the whole editing process of image and of sound. So this is the way that I portrayed my generation, really through images. It sort of began with my last year at the Academy of University, where I had to make a short film to receive my diploma. And my initial idea was to look at that major influence on a youth of American film. And so I came to New York to make that short film, but once I was here, I realized that I knew every corner of the city. I knew all of the spaces. How was it that I knew them? It just showed that strong impact on us and on my generation, of these films that we'd seen. And then I realized that if I wanted to show this, I had to start from home instead. So I went back home in order to talk about how these films, these American films, had shaped our emotional growth as well. The film resembles me a lot. Maybe the confusion that I have, maybe being a little bit, distracted, ADHD, and I was also sort of wondering if this is something that other people saw in me, like starting really with the elementary school teacher and the kids that knew me when I was growing up, when I was little. And when I see the film, I say, yes, this is me, this is so. And there was a lot of satisfaction also in the technical work, in the work that I did with the actors, in using language to sort of make things more realistic in a way, in the work that I did with this group of amateur actors as well. On the one hand, these sort of amateur actors, on the other hand, a very sophisticated editing process, and how these two things came together in order to create really this portrait of me. It's a film about adolescents, about teenagers who want to leave their mark on the world. And this is one of these things that really survived in this. All of these people with our desire to leave a trace of us in the midst of this world which is just overwhelmed with images. In terms of influences, I think, first of all, the film, since it is being shot in the Roman countryside, there is an invasion, really, you could say, of neorealist images, of films from neorealism to Pasolini as well, where so many films were made. But at the same time, since it's set in the 1990s, there's also this powerful, imprint of American film and of Japanese film as well.
This film is a love story between a mother and his old child, a grown-up man of 40 years old who still lives in a house with her.
Non è male.
And this story is full of love, of course, but also full of complicated feelings and full of memories and fantasies of a country far away, which is Colombia. which is the country where the mother comes from and where the child will go to. I want the mother and the son to live in a world which is like a bubble, which is like, yeah, a paradise, in meaning it's a world that exists only for them, that they could speak a language which belonged only to them, you know. And this language is a constant mixture of Spanish and Roman, even more than Italian.
¡Abrí esta puerta, carajo! Ah, ¿te quieres quedar ahí? Bueno, quédate ahí.
And so I wanted to make them switch all the time so that they have a common language that nobody else would speak or understand.
Más tema. Cuando subes,
There is the work with my actors, which is so intense. I'm doing camera as well, so I'm with them all the time. I'm into the scene, and I want to feel like a character too, like I'm acting with them, with the camera.
Amor eterno e inolvidable.
And that, I think it's crucial to get this kind of organic feeling in the acting, in the space of the scene.
Stop. Ok, abbiamo finito.
And then, of course, I try to bring in reality with places and with people, basically. So this is exactly what I tried to do in Rome, and especially in Colombia, in the last part of the film. I was afraid that for the last scenes in the salsa bar, this could have been fake somehow, staged. So I spent like 2 nights going around in salsa bars and meeting people and asking people if they want to join. And then on the day of the shooting, there were all these guys, pretty old guys, who were really passionate of salsa dancing in these tough neighborhoods in Cali, who were coming with their friends, perfectly dressed and willing to dance all night long. And that was a huge gift to me. And at the same time, I think a huge gift for the film, because every single person who stepped into the frame of a film is bringing his life story with him.
Thanks for watching this episode of Italics. I'm Anthony Tamburri. Arrivederci alla prossima puntata.